Hey everyone, so today we're looking at the top 5 best team comps for Teamfight Tactics right now in 9.16. The meta is slowly settling a little bit, but things have definitely changed with this huge patch and the new 4 champions that we have. Saving your gold and economy is really important this patch. You want to save it so you can roll down later at level 7 or 8, and finding these legendaries that are really important. Most of these comps are available on Mobalytics, by the way, as well, along with a lot of others, and that is a site that I'm using for everything right now. So if you want more detail or reference in-game, anything like that, check the link down below. So first up, we're going to be looking at Nobles, and specifically 2 variations of this with DRAVEN and with JINX. Nobles' biggest counters, Void and Sorcerers, have been nerfed in this patch, and even after the hotfix nerf to Nobles, they basically take forever to die, and they have really good backline damage. You can force this later pretty easily, but it works best with a Knight and a Noble start for sure, and then obviously, as I said, Ludens on Lucian is OP and really good with this. Nobles in general are very strong early, kind of weak mid-game, and then really good later, and the only hard part about this is finding a KO. It's good versus pretty much every single comp out there right now. There is no obvious weak side to it. And also, just to point out, Leona is so good at 2 stars. I don't think she gets enough attention, but there is an 8-second stun on Leona ultimate. It can hit your carry and pretty much lose after that because they can't do anything for a long time. I think it's the best late game comp in the game at the moment, but it isn't just from the Nobles. DRAVEN is really strong anyway. There is 1 Blademaster in the Nobles already, so you only need 1 more after that, like normally a Yasuo or something, or Gangplank. DRAVEN is super strong anyway. We already know that. There is 1 Blademaster in Nobles, which is Fiora, so you only need to add 1 more after that, something like a Yasuo maybe, and you have your 3. The other is easier, and it only requires 7 spots technically, and that is JINX. You need 1 other Gunslinger for the main synergy, which is Lucian from Nobles already, so it's very easy to slot this in, and most likely going to get your resets because Nobles are very tanky and last a long time with Kayle. At level 8, you can slot in a Vi, for example, and use Hextech if you want to. It's very strong against item stackers, but honestly, the last spot is up to you. You can actually do both of these if you make JINX a Blademaster, by the way, later into the game with the Spatula item. That's kind of like the ultimate dream. You have your Nobles, then you have your DRAVEN and your JINX and 3 Blademasters. Early game, you really want to have a Noble or a Knight star, ideally with Lucian and Garen 2-star, but as I said, it doesn't really matter too much. You just need to win a bit early, have a good start, and then get some gold, get some levels, and find that Kayle. Piecing together whatever good combo you can find, like Rangers, Slingers, Knights, and playing to win fights, that is the important part. Don't worry too much about Nobles to start with. Mid-game is the hardest part about this comp. It's really hard not to fixate on finding a Kayle, but you want to use something else for the time being and keep some Nobles on the bench and then swap after. Our next comp is Imperials and Blademasters, and this is 2 of the best late game carries in the entire game when given items, DRAVEN and Swain. So you want to run this comp when you have a Guardian Angel and Umbrella already, or a Rapid Fire and Bloodthirster ideally built, and then you just have to find the Swain and the DRAVEN. DRAVEN slots into Nobles very well, and a few others, but this is the ideal setup you can have if you can piece it together. You're probably not going to run this until very later into the game. To start with, you'll be running Blademasters or some variation of it, and then you swap it over. You don't have to have 4 Imperials until later, so don't force it too hard. Like Katarina and Darius don't really do that much. The reason you want to swap to it eventually is because you're getting double damage on Swain and DRAVEN rather than just one or the other. Swain will hard carry later if you can get it to 2-star, but you will need at least level 8 for this, or be very lucky to find it. Knights work pretty well, or Brawlers work well as a front line to start the game with, and the more crowd control you can find, the better it's going to be. This is one of the few comps that can actually beat Nobles because Swain is just that strong. Plus you have triple threat with Yasuo on top of the others, so you have enough damage. Even at 1-star with these items, Swain will carry for a very good part of the game until much later. Runens is a really good item for DRAVEN if you can grab it as well, because you're going to heal it for more, and if you find Dragon Skull for Swain as well, he will literally never die. So early game, you want to be finding your Knights. Nobles is fine as well. You can use Vayne to hold DRAVEN's items and Garen to hold Swain's. That's probably the ideal. This is a late game build, so basically you want to try and win. Use what you can. Build your items. Brawlers are very strong. Knights are very strong. Nobles are strong. Hextech is good to choose early, and then you swap to this comp later. You want to be saving your gold again, same as Nobles, and then level and look for the DRAVEN if you can find it, but probably not going to roll too hard to get it. Brawlers can make a really good front line for a good portion of the game, and the comp for mid game, if you find DRAVEN, would then be 3 Blademasters and a front line for most of the time. You can also use JINX though for the time being before you find a DRAVEN, and then go for whichever you find at 2-star first. The one downside to a DRAVEN comp is it really needs 3 DRAVENs, and if other people have them before you, you kind of have to deviate out. If you want to use the JINX instead, then this next comp is what you would transition to at that point. So the best and probably easiest Jinx comp to run at the moment is going to be Brawlers with Jinx in the backline. Jinx needs time to get her 2 kills and to really start popping off and doing a lot of damage, and Brawlers are one of the best front lines in the game at the moment. You want to run this when you find Brawlers early or you find Jinx early and you have decent items for an AD champion. There are 3 main synergies at work here in this comp at the same time, so Brawlers, Gunslingers, and Hextech. Gangplank is extremely good early to mid game now, and even late game actually if you stick a Guardian Angel on him with a Morello. The barrels will seriously hurt and they apply the burn as well. You can even put something on him like a Hush or a Disarm or something to mana lock or disarm everybody on their team through the barrels. When you get to 6 Brawlers, they take forever to die. You actually have some decent damage, but not a ton. Like Cho'Gath will do a little bit, Vi will do a little bit, but it won't be huge. Because the health boost is so good as well, you don't even need to find them all 2-star to start running the 6 because it will boost everybody else. So that is our front line really, and then Gangplank is some of our damage, and Jinx is the perfect last spot. You get Hextech with this, with Vi, which will give you more time in fights anyway, and then she provides a ton of damage, and Gunslingers with Gangplank. One of the more underrated parts about it is Jinx has really good synergy with Blitzcrank. He hooks a unit. Normally, someone places a crappy one in the corner, right, that's just going to die, but that is fine because she gets her first kill and only needs 1 more to start the missile spam. Early game, you ideally want to be looking for your Brawlers and having some kind of damage. As I said, Ahri is pretty good with this as well if you have some AP items with Warwick because you can run the Wild bonus or you can run Void and have Kha'Zix carry for a bit. Ionic Spark can really help as well. Brawlers aren't the highest damage output, but they last a long time, which is perfect pretty much for an Ionic Spark that does more damage over the fight. You do need level 7 to make this comp work, so mid-game that is what we're aiming for, and then level 8 when you can afford to do it after. The only bad part is Jinx is very contested, and it can be pretty hard to 2-star her. Less so now, I feel like, as the patch is going on, but that is why you want your Gangplank to carry until you get your Jinx. Next up, we're going to look at Sorcerers. There are a lot of different versions of this, but I think at the moment, the ones that I see are Void, Elementalists, or your Dragon. So Cho'Gath can still pack a really good punch, and Elementalists were buffed, and Aurelion Soul is a monster, and Sorcs are still pretty good for AoE team-wide damage. This comp is really good when you have early mana, early AP items, or you have a good Void start, or when you find Aurelions or Karthus pretty early into the game. It's also a very good answer to Nobles, Jinx, and Draven stacking if you can find the pieces for it, and you have the items, especially Morello. The main part obviously are your Sorcerers. So normally Veigar, because he's a beast anyway. Twisted Fate is really good, at least mid game for the blue cards and the mana regeneration, and then a real carry like Karthus or Aurelion. You can definitely run Ahri as kind of your item placeholder for this to carry for a while if you want to. She definitely works better with the Brawler variation, so Brawler Sorcs for wild bonus, but you can just run like Warwick and another Brawler with the Ahri to carry. I know that is a lot of options, so it can get a bit confusing, but basically you run 3 Sorcs with either Voids or Elementalists, and then you fill out the rest with Yordles or whatever you need. If you run Aurelion, you really should grab a Shyvana as well though for the Dragon synergy, and make sure you beat pretty much any other Sorc comp in the entire game. So early game, you don't want to force Sorcerers too early normally. Kennen will definitely like be pretty good to pick up if you get Morello especially, and 2-star Lulu can carry with the healing, but you really just want to play to win. Again, we're looking at like Nobles to carry for a bit, Knights are normally a good frontline. You can even use Brawlers as well with the Ahri variation to kind of like hold the items for a bit. So mid game, you want to play for levels, but you want to pick up your Sorcs as you go and Elementalist, and then kind of like swap mid game. Twisted Fate is so good for Sorcerer comps when you made that mid game transition, especially with Aurelion as well. It gets him to ult earlier, but you ult so much more, and obviously that's most of your damage. Even a 1-star Aurelion is going to be strong enough with a few items if your front line is good enough, so you can definitely just slot that in straight away. 2-star Kennen with Morello, ideally Guardian Angel, will carry your mid game while you're building the proper Sorcerer parts and trying to get that Aurelion to 2-star. There are lots of different comps and variations that we can have for our last one. Like Rengar stack is still pretty good. The Ahri one we've kind of mentioned as well. Just pure Gunslingers also works. But demons are really strong again. So we're going to look at demons and shapeshifters. We also now have 6 shapeshifters in the game. It can line up together really nicely. You want to run this when you find shapeshifters pretty much. You can run 3 shapeshifters and demons, or the full 6. Demons work with a lot of different stuff. I see elementalists, a lot sorcerers, but you can kind of slot those into the last comp that we just looked at with the sorcerers. 6 shapeshifters is new, and it's really good if you can pull it off. It's not the easiest thing, but it is really strong. You can just run 3 if you want to, like Gnar, Elise, and Swain are really good. You get demons and a nutty frontline, but since it's only 3 units, you can literally run like 6 demons as well if you wanted and get your ultimate super quick. Evelyn is actually really strong now that she can burn mana and ultimate faster, so if you want to throw a few items on her, she can actually pop off. There is one bad part. You need to find a Swain to really make this comp work, but there are a lot of other things that you can do until then. Shyvana will carry carry for a while, especially if you item her with a couple of AD items like Rapid Fire or Guardian Angel, but you can actually have like other champions just hold Swain's items. Demons will definitely help you. You can run Aurelion Sol if you find him and use Shapeshifters as a frontline and just use like kind of Shapeshifter Sorks. You can run Yordles, you can run Knights, Nobles, whatever. Basically, you pick these up as you go, you swap to 3, and then you swap to the final 6. By the way, when you do hit 6 as well, even if some of them are 1-star, it doesn't actually matter too much. As long as the important ones transform, you can still win. If you are going to start with Shapeshifters, you want another Demon with the Elise, possibly a Warwick with the Nidalee, and then Jason Shyvana as your third. You can use Knights or Nobles to boost the early game. Garen is really good as a placeholder for Swain, as we said, because he uses the same items like really well. 4 Demons is pretty good if you can get a few of them 2-starred, like Evelyn for example, and put some items on her, but then you can swap back into Shapeshifters later. Elementalist is also good if you have the brand, but you can't find a Nart or Shyvana too, and you want to run that as a frontline for now. Economy is pretty important in this comp because you're going to probably, unless you're very lucky, have to roll for that Swain. That'll be your 6 Shapeshifters. He gives you the extra health, but also has a demon passive built in, which is so good and makes Swain ultimate faster. If you can find a Yuumi, like the sorcerer buff, or especially actually the demon version for the Nart, it can be really good to make him ult faster and get that crowd control even earlier into the fight. So those are going to be 5 comps that I'm seeing all the time, and probably 5 of the strongest in the game at the moment if you want to climb in Teamfight Tactics. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and learned something. Let me know what comps you're using down in the comment section below. But for now, I will leave you with the robots.